I'm Kathy Kilroy. I have the pleasure of knowing most of you, but I am the Career Management Group Program Committee Chair. My company, CMG, Career Management Partners, along with the Overture Group, are the sponsor companies for the Career Management Group. And at CMG, our business is all about helping people advance in your careers. Our primary practices are executive recruiting, high potential coaching, and mentoring, and career transition and outplacement. A couple of announcements before we get started. Please put your name and email in the chat. We'll be distributing the attendee list after the session, and we're going to be raffling off one of Erin's books. So you're going to want to be sure to have your email in there as well. Please place yourself on mute during the presentation, but you're welcome to keep your camera on. Questions can be asked through the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. And, we're a small and intimate enough group that, I'll monitor the questions for Erin. We'll be taking them throughout. And if it makes sense, certainly love to have you come off screen and ask a question so it's more interactive. Today's session, FEI will offer one CPE credit, but you must attend the full meeting from 8 to 9. And you get that credit by emailing Susan at info@feichicago.org. I want to welcome our guests to FEI and let you know that FEI is offering a 6-month free trial membership, which I encourage you to take advantage of. As a longtime member and sponsor of FEI, I can tell you I've developed so many wonderful relationships and friendships with FEI colleagues, and I've learned so much in the process. Our FEI Chicago chapter is a very active and welcoming community. As a FEI member, you'll have the opportunity to connect with and build relationships with other financial leaders, not only in Chicagoland, but nationally, to expand your network as well as benchmark best practices. You can participate in live and virtual professional development forums and receive these CPE credits. There are also a number of leadership opportunities for you at both the national and local level, which often gives you an opportunity to connect at a deeper level with people, as well as enhance your leadership skills and boost your career opportunities. And last but not least, you'll have access to the whole national network of senior financial executives through the FEI portal. So please consider it, and you're certainly welcome to share that FEI membership opportunity with any of your financial colleagues. All right, and now on to our speaker. I'm very pleased to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Erin Brooks. I think most of you on the call probably know Erin. He is a long-term FEI member as well as a favorite speaker. He's the author of Sincerity, the recipe for living your best personal and professional life. Erin is truly a networker, but more of a connector. He's a strategic relationship manager and a public speaker, so you see him in many different venues. And he is currently serving in the role as Vice President of Strategic Accounts at Compass Marketing. And Erin will share his story in a little more detail and his career journey during the presentation. So Erin, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. So this is a really, really fun presentation to give today, because this is my favorite group, and you guys don't tell anybody that, although I guess this is being recorded. So this is really where a big part of my career journey started. I'll never forget coming into a CMG meeting Skip Newman, Warren Pugh. This goes back, I don't know, 15 years or so ago, maybe, easily, out in Rosemont. And this group was just so welcoming from the very beginning. And it didn't matter if you were a quote unquote a vendor, a member, a guest. It was just a welcoming group, as long as you put something back into it, right? So this is an organization that really taught me what I believe now, and I always cringe when I say the word networking, only because often people don't know what it means. They want to do it, but they don't know what it means. And I think that this organization is a big part of what helped me to realize, to better realize my career potential. So this is great. Thank you again for this invitation. It matters to me so much. Many of you, again, as Kathy mentioned, many of you know me, and I'm very happy to know many of you, and I look forward to getting to know those that I don't. Those that know me probably had heard me over the years talk about writing a book, because over the years I got more and more passionate about, at the end of the day, helping others. And that's really what it's all about. And I'm not holier than thou when I say that, and I don't want to be contrite, but I really truly mean that, because you do get out of life, and I'm 52 years old now, so I'm starting to see it. Actually, I started to see it years ago, but you really get out of it what you put into it. I don't know that I saw that at the earlier in my career. I always kind of felt like, when does the good guy kind of get stuff too, and you realize over time that as long as you're giving and getting, it's amazing what can happen. So this book derived from, networking, thinking I was going to write a book about networking, talking about this presentation I had over the years called Networking for Life that many of you may have seen. And last summer when I left Baker Tilly, thought about starting to write a book. I was connected to a book writing group at Georgetown, which is truly unbelievable. And I don't have enough time today to talk about that journey, but it was a pretty cool journey. If anybody is thinking about writing a book, I can tell you, you can write a book. It's not as difficult or daunting a thing as I made it out to be in my head. It was just taking it and turning it into a process. And everybody on this call certainly understands a process, right? So when I left Baker Tilly, I started writing a book about what I thought was networking until I got about a third of the way through it. And I realized after looking for books on networking, which I couldn't really, but looking for books on networking and seeing so many of them, so many people talking about networking and that type of thing, I realized that's not really what I'm writing about. What I'm writing about is the sincere relationships that I've been able to develop in places like FEI, where those relationships have extended outside of the group to personal friendships and those types of things. And, again, Dan calling me, a few months ago and telling me that he was going to go on his odyssey, in the cabin to look for those types of things. When it takes those relationships become what I'll call more real, it's amazing what can happen. So my book is really about sincerity and what can happen when you build those sincere relationships. So I'm going to jump into sharing my screen, and I'm just going to jump into this. Hold on, let me go to this. So please, somebody just shout out when you can see this, because I know it always takes a moment to switch.
It's loading, Aaron. We got it. Perfect.
Okay. So again, sincerity, the impact of authentic relationships. And I'm just going to change this a little bit so I can see this. Okay. So I already told you a bit about how this company, this derived. Many of you know I spent many years in professional services, sales, quote unquote, selling services. Last 8 or so of which before COVID were with Baker Tilly, which now Mike is with. Mike Brim, good to see you, Mike. And great firm, as all of you know. I did business development, relationship management across all the different service lines of the firm. That was after spending many years with basically publicly traded staffing consulting firms, really kind of staffing firms that go to market as consulting firms. I felt very lucky to spend those 8 years at Baker Tilly as that business changed. And then last year, I wound up joining a firm called Compass Marketing, very differentiated model as it relates to representing consumer packaged goods products from companies of all different sizes, whether it's Kraft or Duracell, or whether it's smaller companies like The Rock's. The Rock has an energy drink called Zoa, and we represent his product online on Amazon. Very differentiated skills as it relates to representing CPG products in special channels, so alternate channels, everything other than food, drug, and mass. We've been doing that for over 25 years, 25 years. And then we're also an Amazon advertising partner, and we've been working on Amazon and helping our clients to effectively work with the algorithms on Amazon rather than work against them. And we have great stories as it relates to that. So I am having a ball, and that only happened because I cold called a gentleman named Lou Fernandez, who some of you may know that name. Lou was this senior VP of audit Navistar, as well as Dave Baring back in the day. When I cold called him, we became friends. We were talking last summer. He told me about Compass. He said, you should talk to the president of the company. And I wound up being able to make a totally complete career pivot to something totally new industry, solely, to be honest with you, because of relationships. At least that's how the door opened. So I think I'm a walking testament to this. I grew up in a family business, bakery, supply, manufacturing, and distributing business. I write about this in the book. All I knew from my father was sincere relationships. My dad would get up we'd get a call at 10 o'clock at night. I'd answer the phone from one of his customers. They had gotten to a bakery. They had forgotten to order something, invariably, and they'd want to talk to my dad. So my dad would get on the phone and he'd dart out of the house at 10 o'clock at night. He'd go pick something up for his customer, drop it off, be home by midnight, and be up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning on the next day to go back and do it all over again. So that was sincere. Those same people were his friends because that's all my dad did was work. So that's really the example and the modeling I had throughout my life. When I joined what I'll call the professional world, I found that, and this is not maybe it sounds like a knock. I think it's just based on what people know and the way that people usually work. I found that a lot of those types of behaviors were not always rewarded. They were actually sometimes threatening. And I found that to be curious and interesting. And with my dad, it never became adversarial between my dad and his customers. And sometimes I saw that happening in corporate America, and that's just never made any sense to me. So that's kind of how I was built. Again, spent these years in project consulting, professional services, business development. I spent a year in private placement life insurance, which was interesting, which some of you know about, then made this complete career pivot. This career pivot allows me to deliver on my sincerity message, because we have a value proposition where I can track to growth. I can track to everything. We can track to everything that we're trying to deliver for our clients. So rather than that value becoming nebulous, it's really easy to track to, and that makes it a lot easier to deliver from a business perspective. So let's talk about what's changed over the past year and a half, what hasn't changed, what the opportunities are, because I see, although a lot of people look at this time that we've been through a negative lens, I prefer to look at pretty much everything through an opportunity lens. And this has created opportunity for those that look to seize it. You have to be more proactive. You've always had to be more proactive, right? If we were doing this in person this morning, we would have all had to get up and drive somewhere, and we would have done that, right? Because we're all proactive people and we see the value in it. Many people don't. And you have to be even more proactive today to create those relationships, because no longer are we getting there a few minutes early, spending some time grabbing a cup of coffee, catching up personally, professionally, giving each other a hug, all of the things that we used to do. We're not doing that as easily. That's really frustrating to me. But again, I've decided to lean into that a bit and really try and I hate to use the cliche, but turn lemons into lemonade. And I've been successful in doing that. I think a lot because of the outlook, as well as then what I'm doing around the outlook from the perspective of day-to-day behaviors. But really quickly, we can't see and work with people in person as often or as easily, can't see family and friends as easily, can't go out to eat, travel like we used to or want to. I can't wait to go to Europe, but I can't do that right now, right? So it just is what it is. I've worked for a firm for a year and a half, and I haven't met in person the majority of the people that I work with. Everything we do is virtual. It works, but it's not as ideal as I'd like it to be, and we have to make it work. So there's a lot of things that we can't do like we used to, and let's get off that side. I'd rather, again, focus on the positive, the opportunities that today's circumstances bring us, right? So everyone wants to connect with others more than ever before. And I don't know that it's fair for me to say everyone, because I haven't surveyed the whole world, but those that I'm connecting with, and I am always connecting with people, when I get down to talking with them and we really get to being honest with one another, people have shared with me that sitting behind this computer is really impersonal, and getting on a call with people, learning about their families, those types of things feels better. It feels more intimate and it feels warmer. But again, we need to be proactive in making that happen. And I'll talk a little bit about how we can do that as we go through this. We have better technology at our fingertips than we ever have before. And interestingly, sorry about that. We have better technology at our fingertips than we ever have. And we've learned how to really use it. So Teams works, Zoom works, FaceTime works. All of these different tools work. We even have them in 3-dimension, in a high definition, and we can just use our computer, right? But and people that were really shy about this technology have been forced to kind of jump into it, right? So if we use this effectively, you don't need to meet people in person in order to develop relationships. And I honestly used to think you did, and you really don't. You can actually meet with and help more people through this medium if you think about it in that way. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, you all know me. If you want to talk about your personal situations as it relates to this, I'm more than happy to do that. We have to travel less. So, after this meeting, I don't have to travel back home for a half hour or 40-minute, whatever it is. I'm right into my next meeting, and I can be that much more effective and more efficient with my time. But again, I need to be thinking about that. And again, we can sincerely build better real relationships, but we need to because we're not going to arrive places early, ride up in an elevator with somebody when we're going to an interview, and have that small talk. We need to create that small talk, and we need to say something like, hey, I'd love to arrive to the meeting or 5 minutes early to talk personal stuff. Or, hey, at the end of this meeting, let's end 5 minutes early. So I'd love to just get to know a little bit more about you and your family and that type of thing. And a lot of people, I've talked with people, and they say after having conversation, they say, I'm networked with this person, and to be honest with you, I don't know anything about their personal situation. All I know is their professional situation, and maybe I left an opportunity on the table. So what is our goal when meeting people besides quote unquote doing business or getting a job, right? Do we think about this? I know people on this call, because I know many of you do think about this, right? But it's hard to think about that at the same time as thinking about creating the commerce that you're trying to create. And it's possible to do that, but it's also about finding a balance, right? So we all want to develop, and I thought of this years ago, this 360-degree relationship example, because I always felt like I never had 180-degree relationships with my clients. I felt like they kind of were impacted by the relationships that they had with other quote unquote vendors. I hate the word vendor. And then once I had an opportunity to work with them, and they experienced working with me and what the relationship could be from a 360-degree perspective, then people would return my calls. So I said to myself, this is really interesting. Now, I mentioned Lou Fernandez and working with Lou Fernandez at Compass Marketing. Lou and I have gotten to know one another very, very well over the years. And when Lou was at Navistar, my son needed to build a Pinewood Derby car when he was in Cub Scouts. And I had remembered that Lou was in Cub Scouts with his kids. So I just called up Lou and I said, my son needs to build a Pinewood Derby car. I am not handy. I don't have tools, and I have no idea how to do this. And I think you may have some ideas for me. He said, not only do I have ideas, come over to my house this weekend. We'll build a Pinewood Derby car. It'll be fun. So I brought my son Andrew over. We built the Pinewood Derby car. And then Andrew actually had a job at Compass Marketing as an intern. Andrew's a senior at Emerson. He actually got a job at Compass 2 months before I did. So this goes to the multidimensional relationship of, your relationship can expand outside of just you and that individual. It can become a family relationship and what I'll call a more real relationship as well. This to me is a really important, this next point is a really important point that I make in the book, as well as that I talk to people about. And that's the concept of work-life integration over and above work-life balance. I think a lot of people think about finding work-life balance. It's just like, it's the cliche thing, right? And that implies that your work life and your personal life are going to be in conflict with one another or be in competition with one another from the perspective of time. The one thing we can't make more of is time, right? So again, this is an organization that really truly does allow people to find that work-life balance as long as they lean into it. Some people, let's face it, and we've talked about this over the years, they get involved in FEI when they think they're looking for something, and then they jump out of it when they're not looking for something anymore, and then they wonder why they feel like they've gotten nothing out of it. That goes to the roadmap to FEI that I've presented on before that I'm really passionate about, because that way we're going to get people to stay in our organization, and they're going to get that much more out of it. And it's really about them getting more out of it, not just staying in the organization, right? That's the message I'm going to get to the why, but that's the why of FEI. what do we want to do when we're meeting with people? We want to accelerate the time between meeting people and becoming a trusted advisor and friend. And I would say you probably need to become a friend before becoming a trusted advisor, but eventually you want to become a most trusted advisor. And I really feel that. And if you can be one of the people that people are thinking about calling when they have a challenge, that's exactly where you're trying to get to. And when you are interviewing with people, when you're networking, quote unquote, to get your next opportunity and such, your orientation should be toward this. Even when you're meeting with people from the perspective of them potentially hiring you, a lot of people look at that as either I'm going to get the job or I'm never going to talk to this person again. And you can even mention, in a meeting that, hey, I'm looking to build a relationship out of this because I realize not every, I'm perfect for this role, right? But I'd still like to keep in touch with you, and that type of thing. So we want to use these meetings as seeds of relationships. Our personal brand is more important than it's ever been before. Because prior to meeting with people, they're going to prior to meeting with you, people are the first place they're going to go is to LinkedIn. They're going to go online. They're going to search for you, and they're going to come up with a perception in their brain about what you represent, who you are. People have probably heard me talk about Blue Ocean Strategy before. Blue Ocean Strategy is a book that it's actually more of a concept that I got really into years ago. And it talks about how most companies, and most people, let's get this down to people, but it's companies as well. It's anybody or any group of people that are selling a product, a service, whatever it might be. Most of them are in what they refer to as the red ocean of competition, where they're chipping away at each other's margin, and it becomes, not to be morbid at 8:30 in the morning, but it becomes that red ocean, right? Rather than finding a new avenue and a new stream where it's a blue ocean and you have no competition. And if you think about it, Amazon did this from the perspective of how people buy books, that type of thing. So everybody, in my opinion, needs to be thinking about what makes them different, as opposed to, for instance, all the other CFOs, all the other VPs of finance, all of the other, whatever it might be, all the other marketing firms. I know what the differentiator of my firm is. And everybody needs to know, and what the differentiator of my brand is, my personal brand, because it's a combination of the two. So everybody needs to be thinking about that. Your personal brand is much more than your online profile. It's not just like, how you advertise yourself. It's really more about, to be honest with you, the behaviors that you personally, and I underline personally, bring to the marketplace consistently every day. So once, you're working, right, and your company is delivering to a company services, whatever it might be, that's table stakes, right? That becomes your opportunity to go beyond that and do even more from a personal perspective. But again, you need to be proactive about doing that. So you need to think about, what do you represent to your network personally as well as professionally, right? But the personal side, again, when Lou Fernandez left Dade Bearing, and then he went to Navistar. When he left Navistar, he actually became a consultant at the time I was with Hudson at United Stationers, when they were going through some challenges from the perspective of their internal audit function. And so we took care of one another. And I have so many of those examples. At this point in my career, it's become fun. Again, you don't need to meet people in person to build a 360-degree relationship. At the beginning of last summer, for years, many people asked me why I didn't create my own networking group. And I just felt like there were enough of them. And I enjoyed being involved in the ones that I was in, and I didn't want to really compete with any. At the beginning of COVID, I was having conversation with Darren Aprati and Valerie Nielsen and a couple of other folks that some of you might know. And they were lamenting that they were stuck behind the screen. And they couldn't go to FEI meetings. They couldn't go to Elite. They couldn't go to all of these places. And they don't have the network that I have, because although Valerie certainly does now. But they were looking for more opportunities, more swings at the bat for a relationship. And I said, well, what if I were to just create a Zoom room, and for 4 weeks, I'll talk on a subject for 20 minutes or so, many of the things that wound up in my book. And then I don't want to present for an hour. I'll present for 20 minutes, and then we will discuss it as a collegial group of people. And the thought of this was, this will be an opportunity for you all to see one another on a screen, and it's much easier and more comfortable to get in touch with people that you've seen on a screen, and you've gotten to know a little bit at least, and coming out of that call, you'll have 15 or so people to be in touch with over the next week, right? Did that for 4 weeks. At the end of it, they asked me if I would continue doing that. We now meet every 2 weeks on Fridays, and it's a great group of people. Additional people have joined, and a couple of months ago, they forced me to name it the Sincerity Group, and it's been a lot of fun to do that. So it's just, you don't need to be, the message here is, and I also don't charge anything for that, and that's important to me, because I don't have to. The message here is, you don't need to be in business development to become a center of influence. Many of the people on this call have become a center of influence within FEI and within the world that we're living in Chicago, right? So I'll say enough of that. So the algorithms of selling have changed. And if you think about how all things are sold, it's changed, right? Products, but also services and the way we look or can get jobs. Right? The way we can represent ourselves from the perspective of online and how that transfers to the real world. Okay. There are many opportunities in that space. It's not the way that many of us got jobs 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Right. We want to create relationships where we can help our friends to buy services well and to hire well. Okay. And what I mean by that is, the best way to get a job is to certainly, you can go through recruiters and those types of things. And that's a way to get connected into a job. But then we want to connect dots in the marketplace to see where we might have, and I know all of you know this, but we want to see where we have common connections, and then tactfully use those connections to connect into the job in a differentiated way, so that when we're meeting with somebody, they say, oh, you know John and you know Joe. And that's going to give them warmth and comfort with you, because it's not always going to be that they're going to hire the smartest person in the room. As a matter of fact, that's often not what it is. They're going to hire the person that they feel the most comfortable with in doing the job, because the fact that you've gotten in front of the hiring manager probably means you have, at least on paper, the skills to do the job. The question becomes, are they going to be comfortable enough to say, not why should I hire you, but why shouldn't I hire you? And if you think about when you go to a doctor, right, and you're meeting with a doctor, and you never feel like you're being sold to, you feel like you're solving a problem together. And again, that relates to finding a job as well. If you build trusting, real relationships over time, which many people here have done, Harlan, you and I have gotten to know one another. I know your reputation from the perspective of, the time you spent at US Foods and Unilever, and now you're out, and and we're going to have a lot of fun getting you involved in this group and others. And through doing that, not only is life going to be fun, it'd be great if you knew when this job search time would end, but we're all going to be really, really supportive of that time. And that's going to be, that's to me really life-changing coming out of this time. Again, your mindset needs to change. Recently, I was connected through a webinar that Compass did, an Amazon webinar, and connected to a very small potential client. And she actually happens to be in Chicago, although many of our clients are not. They're all over the place. My firm is actually in Annapolis, Maryland. And she's too small for us. But rather than thinking that, okay, she's too small for us, I can't do any business with her, sorry. I had talked the week prior to a company where the CEO of that company is a very smart person, is still doing all of their Amazon work. And she realizes that's probably not the highest and best use of her time. She also has a small agency where she does work for other companies, smaller companies, and she doesn't charge them near what market rates are because she enjoys mentoring people. And I only found that out by just having a conversation with her, right? So rather than thinking to myself, well, I can't help Mary, I'm not going to do business with her, no revenue, see ya. I said, you know what, Mary, why don't I connect you with my new friend, Lee? Lee runs this agency. I'll let you guys, take the relationship from there. And then I also invited Mary to get involved in my group. And it felt so good. I mean, she's so appreciative. And that's really, to me, what life is about. So let's talk about networking. I don't like the word networking. I do like to network, but I like the experience of what we all know networking to be, not that transactional feel that most people have around networking. And I actually went out and presented last week to 120 private equity professionals, and I was humbled by this. The reason they were interested in having me come out to speak was the fact that they realize the private equity world is usually sharp elbows, transactional. The private equity sponsor, investors, the management team are at odds with one another. Often, if a family-owned business is being bought by private equity and they now have accountability that they've never had before, it becomes this, rather than becoming, building a trusting relationship with one another. And that's what they were interested in, is how can we build more sincere relationships with our portfolio companies so that we can create easier value together. And so networking is a word that I think we all use, and it's kind of overused and underdefined. Webster defines it, and I don't need to read that. Well, supporting system of sharing information and services among individuals and groups having a common interest, as well as to cultivate people who can be helpful to one another professionally, especially in finding employment or moving to a higher position. So part of that I agree with, the first one. The second one, to me, is more about me rather than more about the other person. And I think that we all know that networking needs to be about other people. So this is many of you may have seen this before, because I wrote this a few years ago, but selflessly helping others with whom one shares a common interest or bond, with the understanding that assistance provided today will continue to make the entire network stronger in the long run. Looking to create value, and I want to caveat that by everybody's definition of value is different. For other people through quality introductions, we all need to meet people, however, right? So the only way we're gonna create commerce, find jobs, find new friends is through meeting new people. If we enable that for others, they will introduce you to other people, and life will become better and more fulfilled, which is really what this conversation is all about. So sincerely unselfish behavior with the trust that value will come back to those that stay true to their networking partners over time. And again, this is what FEI is all about. However, let's talk about micro networking versus macro networking. Macro networking is something we really are having a hard time doing right now, because we can't go to a large, room, bar on one side, bar on the other side. Everybody's trying to juggle their drink, their napkin, their business cards. Many people stand with those that they know. And then many people will leave those types of events and think to themselves, did I really get anything out of that? And then they don't want to get involved in networking. What I believe makes a lot more sense is something that many people on this call already do. And I love teaching people about this, and because they get into it and they really have a lot of fun with it, which is micro networking. I know somebody you should know, somebody I should know, and you make that introduction. I'm going to talk about, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how you make that introduction. And many of you probably have or may have gotten introductions from me before, where you'll see the way that they're written. And that's not by chance. First of all, it's sincere. But second of all, there's a reason why I do it. So Adam Grant, in his book, Give and Take, recommends making 3 introductions a day for other people. It is life-changing if you do that. You don't need to do every day, but if the more introductions you make for others, the more you let them know that you're looking for introductions and to meet people as well, they will then give back to you. And the value, this is in bold for a reason. This is probably, if not definitely, the most important thing I say in the book. The value of your network is not about the number of people you know. It is about the number of people that know one another because of you. And I will, for the rest of my life and my career, I'll be saying that because it's been proven to me that it's true. So this is just quickly an introduction I made to my friend, Rob Johnson. Rob is somebody I met through Darren Aprati, interestingly. And Rob used to be on Channel 2 News. He's become a dear friend. I don't mention Rob to throw names around. I mention Rob because he's become a dear friend through a computer screen. Literally, I just met Rob for the first time a month ago in person. Prior to that, he was already, he's a quote on the back of my book, and I hadn't even met him in person. Rob is truly one of the most sincere people you'll ever know, which is part of the reason he left the news business. So as you'll see in this introduction, I'm being very complimentary about Rob. I'm not waiting for Rob to send me his blurb and then using his words to describe him. I'm trying to be much more personal about my relationship with Rob and why I'm making that introduction. And that creates the bonds that we want to create. Not sure if you have, some folks on this call have heard of Simon Sinek and Start With Why, but I'll never forget when one of my clients and friends said to me years ago, Aaron, the reason I enjoy working with, I was humbled by this, especially when I went home and looked it up. He said, the reason I'm humbled that I enjoy working with you and I've enjoyed getting to know you is that you start with why. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, how do you not know what Start With Why is? And Simon Sinek is. So Start With Why talks about how most people and most companies sell services. They sell from the outside of the circle in. So they talk about what most companies, most people know what it is they do, right? They know how they do it, and how they do it is what you think makes you different. That, to be honest with you, most people don't care about, okay? What people do care about is why you're doing it. And most companies, and the why is not a close, it's not getting the job, it's not an exit, right? If you're in private equity, that can't be the why. Because your why needs to be about much more than that. And interestingly, if Apple were to sell from the perspective of outward in, which they don't, Apple sells why, how, what. And I'm going to show a quick little example, a minute long example in a moment. Apple would say, we make cell phones, right? They're easy to use, user-friendly, and designed really well. Well, you want to buy one? And your question would be, well, what's the price? I already have an Android. I mean, I really don't need that. It's already, as opposed to the way that Apple does things. Right? We believe, and this is what will drive loyalty. We all want to create loyalty with those that we know, the companies that we work with, and that type of thing. So what Apple does, and they've always done, is we believe that everything that we do needs to be different. We believe that everything that we do needs to be innovative, right? Our products happen to be, well-designed, easy to use, and user-friendly. We happen to make cell phones. Want to see one? So you're starting with the why. Now I'm going to really quickly, and if you do that, by the way, you will inspire and delight your friends, your clients. If you come into an interview and you talk about not what you did at the companies that you were at, but why you were so passionate about it, people are going to start to see, God, this person's a passionate person. Most people are just talking about what they did. This person's telling me why they did it. Now I'm engaged, right? And again, please get in touch with me if anybody would like to discuss more of that. So I'm going to go to stop share, and I'm going to go to something else here. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Can you hear that as well when it started?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
All right. So, as you know, many of us have probably seen that commercial, and I'm not sure.
As your digital company grows, so does your library of API assets. Eventually, it becomes so big, it's unmanageable.
Sorry about that. All right. So, many of us have probably seen that commercial before, And maybe you've thought about that from the perspective of, how they advertise. Probably you haven't, because a lot of these things become subliminal. But these are things that certainly can be utilized for all of us as we work, and we represent ourselves in the marketplace over time. So why does this all matter? People will return our calls because they want to, rather than because they have to. We want people to return our calls because they want to, and we want to start to this time that people might be spending in transition, or the time that you've spent in transition. You don't want to stop doing these things once you land, and most people on this call know that. Why that many of you that I already know, and those that I don't, or that are at the beginning of this journey, you'll see you'll start to see the value of doing that. People will have an easier time saying, "Why wouldn't I do this?" And that's what we want people to say when making a hiring decision, a decision to use a service or something like that. We don't want them to say, "Why would I?" They will refer others to you to create relationships and future opportunities. Again, you want to let people know that you're looking for those types of things. It's much easier to work through business and career opportunities when there is real and sincere trust that's either already established or where the parties know people in common. So again, that's where the connecting of the dots really, really comes into play. And that's really powerful, particularly once you've built a nice network for yourself. So what's next? I think we're doing well on time. So what's next? Become a center of influence. Many of you already have the beginnings of doing that, and many of you already are, right? Otis Usher happens to not be on this call today, but I often use Otis very affectionately as an example of somebody who has leaned into FEI personally, professionally, is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And I think 3 or 4 of his roles have come through connections that he's been able to make in FEI. So it's not that he got the job because of those connections. He was able to connect into the role or differentiate himself and be taken as the guy, if you will, the person, possibly because of those that he'd met and built a trust with. And he's also a connector for other people as well as many people on this call are. Again, change your mindset to connect and help first, rather than close the business and get the job. And if you do that, you'll always have something to do throughout this journey. Create those relationships for others. You'll get relationships back, and you'll have plenty of people to meet with. Proactively and take personal relationship and those with whom you work, those that you're getting to know, and that will inspire people. And again, the most important 5 words in the English language are probably, "How can I help you?" But that's reactive, but it also can be proactive, where you say, I think I realize that there's this person that you should meet. I'd love to make this introduction for you. So that's all I have today. And we have, Kathy, we have about 13 minutes or so for questions. So.
Okay, why don't you take this, good, stop sharing and people can come on screen. Thank you, Aaron. Lots of great tips and insights shared. We had a lot of great comments throughout on the chat. People, agreeing with you and reinforcing points as well. Certainly a lot of good takeaways. I know for all of us, if building those deeper relationships, it simply makes life much more fun, right? And I think when we build those deeper relationships and connect with people and get to know them on a more personal basis, we remember things better. At least I do. I make the connections with stories. So we remember, and then we're able to help you better. Some awesome tips around that. I think the change of mindset, that giving mindset, and I would agree with you. I think most of the people on the call certainly have grown in that capacity over the years through their involvement with FEI. Everybody really does have that pay it forward attitude and want to give back and help. And, today, actually, when we send you the contact list of everybody in the session today, make sure you reach out. If you're not connected to people, make sure you reach out, because all of us here are here to help and support you and happy to make introductions for you as well. So let's open it up. Any further comments or questions? You can take yourself off mute and come on screen, my friends.
This is Sherry. Can you hear me?
Yes, Sherry.
Great.
Nice to see you.
I have a really quick question. I'm curious if in your travels, research, exploring this topic, did you come across any evidence that might suggest that this type of work, this type of connection, this type of relationship building has a gender bias in any way? Do women do it differently than men?
That is so interesting. Wow, you just blew my mind. I'm interested in that. I'd love to talk with you further about that, actually. I didn't look into it, to be honest with you, because my brain doesn't work like that at all. Literally not at all. So
therein lies my question.
No, but it's an interesting
there is such a difference, I think.
I totally agree with you, Sherry, and so appreciate the question. That's a topic in and of itself, right?
Yeah.
And
wow.
Yeah.
God, you may have just helped me with a topic. You may have just helped me with a topic for my next book. I don't know. Although this group is an interesting group to speak to, because Brandy, I'd look forward to getting to know you. No, there are people that are dialed in here that I don't know, but those that I do know, I don't see any difference in the way that they do this, as between gender. But maybe that's because they've gotten so comfortable with this particular organization and this group of folks. You know what I'm saying? I think when people are coming into relationships cold, as I'm thinking about it, I do think that people approach these things differently, or by gender, maybe. I don't want to say that out of hand, but I do believe that could be possible. So you have me thinking, and I'm going to do research into that, and I'll be getting back to you, Sharon.
Well, and don't you think, certainly we've seen an evolution over the years, and Erin, you and I have both been involved with FEI for so many years, but I can remember first starting out and going into those dinner meetings and being, one of 2 or 3 women in the room, and it was intimidating, right?
Sure.
So figuring out how to make connections, but the more you participate and get involved and start to know people, and then I was able to feel comfortable, able to invite other people in, and when we were in those sessions, say, make the connection. You really need to meet to help make that transition easier on the networking side. But I agree with Cher. I certainly do see and hear from a lot of the work I do with women that there are differences in the way men and women approach this. And certainly, Sherry, from a DEI standpoint, where, we see a whole lot more emphasis and focus, I think there truly is. And, the good news is we're moving in the right direction, but we still have a long way to go.
Yep. Great. That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking that.
Yeah, awesome question. Anybody else, insights or things you've experienced or want to share?
This is Jen, and I would say I'm right there with Kathy and Sherry on the last statements. But I will say I do think the FEI group is really unique in many ways. And I think that Aaron really hit on something at the beginning where he was talking about everybody in the group gives back. And that is part of the way that we connect. I'm also of a business development background, many of you know, and there is a member of FEI who I think very, very highly of, who has told me that you hire your salespeople with a known tolerance for the fact that they're professional liars. And for me, I took that to heart and very personally, and I had to kind of get over myself, right? Like we keep having our series with Idea Committee and everything about checking your own biases. But for me, I subscribe to Aaron's sincerity. And I think that most people in this group know that about me, right? So knowing that my profession is viewed one way, but generally my success has come from sincerity and genuine and forgiving back. So it's an interesting balance. I'd love to hear you explore more on that and how people can demonstrate that in other ways, because I do think that's a huge key indicator for this group and a differentiator, I would say.
I agree that it's a differentiator of this group. I agree that, and I'm pretty blunt, I agree that most people perceive salespeople to be liars. and do whatever they can to quote unquote close the deal. I don't really care about closing the deal. Closing the deal is not my why. Helping people is my why. Helping to create, now that's part of why I'm enjoying being where I'm at right now, because again, my value proposition when I'm talking with C-level folks that are incented on growing their company is I can really deliver on that. I'm an Amazon like I can prove it. You know, I can show you based on a particular SKU, you invest this much, you're going to get this much return on your investment. And, you know, it's amazing. So we want to help people to buy services well. We don't want to sell, right? Jen, I know you don't sell. You're a human being before you are a salesperson. And a lot of people that are in business, they like get up in the morning and then they go become their professional self. And in order to be successful, they need to become kind of a jerk. Sorry, but they do, or a liar. And that is just not something that I've ever wanted to do. And over time, I found myself working with and around people that I trusted. And then suddenly I was working around people that I wasn't trusting, that I didn't trust anymore. And then I had to go, right? Because anyway, that I could go on and on about that, Jen, but you hit on something.
Great comment, Jen, and certainly agree. You know, I'm in that kind of sales role as well, but my why is it's really helping and supporting and connecting people. And I love to do that. And, you know, I think for me, it's all about relationship building. And so you tend to have long-term relationships and clients that stay with you over time, right? Because you're their trusted advisor, really. If I can't provide the solution, I'm going to find the solution.
Exactly. And many people think they have a relationship when they really don't, right? Yep. Just having a contact on LinkedIn does not mean you have a relationship.
Exactly. So Aaron has generously offered to raffle off a book. So Aaron, I'm going to have you pick a number between 1 and 27, please. Just pick a number and we'll
1 and 32.
1 and 32. Sorry, Susan. Thank you.
1 and 32?
1 and 32. Just pick a number.
22.
Mike Nadler.
Hey, okay. Mike wins the book.
You know what, Mike, if you're open to it, we can just meet for breakfast at Highland Park and I'll give you the book.
I was going to suggest that. We haven't seen each other in quite a while. Since you do live in the Highland Park, I'll be happy to meet with you and get an autographed copy.
Yeah, we'll do like Country Kitchen or something like that.
Oh, that's great.
I may even buy you breakfast.
Oh my God.
Boy, such a treat. Well, that's great. Congratulations, Mike. Just to plug, another thing Aaron mentioned, the more you put into FEI, obviously, the more you're going to get out of it. And for many of us, those deeper relationships at FEI have been built not only by showing up for meetings or attending, sessions like this on the screen. It's getting involved in the organization on different committees. So I'm going to give a plug for my committee. If anybody is interested in working with our committee on the career program committee, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you. Or if there's people in your organization, younger people in the pipeline that you want to get involved in FEI, we love to have those conversations with them as well. And our next CMG session will be December 2nd. It will be a Zoom session as well. And our topic is compensation trends. So timely going into the new year, we'll take a look at CFO and C-suite compensation trends. And we have Linda Vandeventer presenting. It's an awesome presentation and it's great in the Zoom environment because there's a lot of data, so you'll be able to capture it and see it on the screen. We're actually taking November off from the CMG meeting because that's the month for the CFO of the Year Awards. This year, they will be live streamed on FEI Chicago YouTube channel on November 18th. So certainly look for more information on that and go into FEI events to check that out. There will be a few at that session. We're not doing them in person. It will be invitation only for a small group to attend that session. Remember, please, to take advantage of the 6-month free trial membership, and also mention that to friends and colleagues that might benefit from that. And after today's session, in addition to the attendee list, we're going to send you a quick survey, a 3-minute evaluation. We'd love to get your feedback. We appreciate it. So please take time to complete that. And with that, my friends, I think it's a wrap.
Again,
Thanks,
thank you.
Aaron. Thanks,
Aaron,
Kathy.
thank
That was
you.
great.
It really
Thank
was.
you. Yes, Aaron.
Thanks, Aaron.
From the
Have a
bottom of
great
my
day.
heart, thank you. This is a
Thanks,
great
Aaron.
organization. Anything I
All
can
right.
do to help any of you, please be in touch.
Great. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Love you.
Okay,
See you
thanks, Aaron.
soon.